Welcome to Let Me Be Your Voice project. And thank you first and foremost for your interest and your participation in this movement. This is a platform for everybody to connect through your stories, to empower and inspire each other, and to create this ripple effect of healing throughout the world. So thank you. Hello, Ellie Prana here. I am here today to share with you probably one of the most vulnerable story and the oldest experience of rape in my life. I was dating a guy for 3 months. So this relationship started out with him begging to give him a chance. I probably should have listened to my gut feelings of, no, it's not gonna work. But I was naive, I was only 19. I just had two other sexual partner at the time, and it wasn't that big of a deal. It didn't feel like that big of a deal. So 3 months later, I was trying to break up with him, and that was the hardest thing that I can recall in the 19 years of my life, because it was not only resistant, but he started to threaten me that all these things that he was going to do if I left him. I remember one time we were walking over the bridge and he literally tried to jump off. And I remember as a 19-year-old girl freaking out and having to pull him off of this edge of the bridge. And that was a really terrifying experience for me at the time. So when I tried to break up with him after 3 months, aside from all this assaults or threats that happened, eventually it ended. But it ended with a very painful experience where he literally resisted to break up and he raped me in the car. The car was locked. I think at one point he had his hand over my mouth and I couldn't say anything. And I remember when it did slip and I got to scream in the car, and I remember him telling me, nobody's gonna hear you. Car is soundproof. And that I just remember that like frozen feelings. And basically throughout he fucked me and he videotaped, or I can't remember if it was video or photo, which I believe it's photo. The technology wasn't so advanced at that time. But his last words were that if I were to tell anybody, that the photos were gonna be online. So you can imagine with a 19-year-old with not as much experience, that was really, really frightening. Additional part of the story is it's a little bit crazy because he was really psychologically ill. He was mentally ill. So he spends, according to him, like a year in a hospital after we broke up. And when just our paths crossed again, because it was a small community of, friends, he came to me and said, he put me through all this guilt trip of all he could hear was his father telling him that he's a wreck, he's not functioning as a human, and next thing he knew, he woke up in the hospital with no memory. And then he came back to me saying, I want to hang out with you to see if you can help me bring my memories back. Because it seems like I lost memory after I stopped hanging out with you. And that was oh God, I can still remember that like contraction in me, like feeling like I caused this, like, is this my fault? And as much as I felt bad for what he had experienced, if it was even true, I just couldn't be around. I couldn't find a way to forgive him at the time. I was still like, it was 2 years later. I was still, 21, and I couldn't find the way. I guess I couldn't really deal with the fact of like really facing what happened and how fucked up it was, and to really accuse him of doing things like this, because at that time already, I knew how he was really just gone and out of his mind. So I didn't even really try to talk to him. So that's my story. And I personally believe that this was sort of the beginning of my very corrupted relationship I would say. I grew up with a father who believed in physical discipline. So, as a child, what I experienced was physical abuse, regardless of what he thought it was, because that's all I remember him as. I remember feeling really scared, like most of the time scared, not knowing when he would lose his temper. And he had to be always right. And if I were to say something or do something that's not in alignment with what he desired, I deserved a hit in my face. And this was my experience as a child. So, as intense as this, my first rape, followed by a few assaults by the same guy, had been, somewhere in me allowed this to happen. I take full responsibilities of something inside of me, that probably the depressed part of me, brought and attracted this person into my life as a teenager. And really started to repeat that pattern of freezing in the moment of fear, in the moment of shock, in the moment that my autonomy is taken away. I'm not free. I don't have voice. I have no say. These are all the feelings that I experienced at home growing up. And that was a condensed version of that in the car. Emotional blockages, yes. Triggers, yes. PTSD, yes. I remember, I went celibate in my early 20s for 2 years because I could not believe in a man. I could not risk bringing in a man into my life. I didn't trust men, period. I was afraid of car. Being in the car with a man was frightening. And I would also like to add that this 2 years was one of my biggest personal growth years. I had worked on myself so much that I had a lot of breakthroughs. I learned so much about myself. So even though this was caused by fear, I do not regret this 2 years. Like in anything, you can spend 2 years being depressed and being a victim and just blaming the life or world or universe, whatever, for bringing this incident into my life. Or you could actually use this time to deep dive into your world, to really look at yourself inside out, really work on yourself, and be the driver of your own life. My coping mechanism was basically really focusing on my dream. So that was a really cool, I think, coping mechanism, because I was in this starting to go to fashion school, which was my love since I was 14, and I had this big dream, and so I was going for it. It was good to have time to myself, to be able to do lots of projects and lots of shows, and starting my own brand already when I was like 20 or 21. I will mention that he had a very unfortunate family background where his parents were divorced and he was not allowed to see his mother. So that power dynamic is already, pretty corrupted because everybody should have their freedom. So he was seeing her secretly. And so he was also living under fear of being caught by his father for something that he had the right to do. Love, we need more love, we need more compassion. I really believe in his case that parents shouldn't decide what the child should do with the other parent just because they separated. That I felt truly sorry for him. In me, I really needed to change the fact that I didn't trust adults, period. I had a lot of problem not trusting growing up. And it's interesting because a lot of problems happen for me for being gullible, like almost always trusting. So I didn't trust that I had help, that I had support around, that I could open up to other people, that people were, I mean, especially, when you're 19, people around, friends around were able to hold me. And I think the best would have been to really talk about this with my family, like with my mother and my siblings that I trusted. So 18 years experience on top of that. There's a lot to say. There's a lot to have love and compassion for this man at his age at the time, and for me at this age at the time. So it's not really about like being angry that this asshole raped me when I was young, but it definitely is not something that's okay. If I ever get a chance to tell him in the face, this is all I have to say next time, is that I hope he learned his lesson in his life. I'm sure, because what you put out in the world is what you receive. So I don't think I necessarily need to punish him for anything, but I think that he has gotten his life lessons. So my message for those of you who have experienced what I've experienced, who have recently been in that situation, still very confused and hurt, or it has been many years but still haven't made sense of it. My suggestion for you is there is no one answer. It is what we take from it. So stuff that needs attention might be asking you for your attention by this incident. If you were somehow able to look at it in that way, what would that lesson be? What can you learn from this experience? How can you transform it into power? Reclaim your power, reclaim your voice. I highly suggest you speak about it, even anonymously, to your friends, to your loved one, or on this channel. I so welcome that, because for me, it has been a huge healing path to be able to voice it, to voice my truth, to voice my feelings and my story that matters. Because oftentimes, we feel that we don't even matter. Things like this happen and you feel so ashamed and so guilty and just confused in life and feel lonely because you don't know what to do, you don't know who to talk to, and you don't, it's hard for you to believe that your story matters. What you have to say matters. Like I'm doing right now, your story can empower and inspire others as well. Because there's always the other side. Like this picture. The sun always rises, regardless of what happens. And with time and intention and self-work, lots and lots and lots of self-love, you can rise the sun within as well. Thank you so much.